Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would seem that Marlen Esparza, ahead of tomorrow's fight with Yokasta Valle, has once again missed weight. I believe she missed weight in her last fight with Areli Musinho, and now she's missed it again for this one with Yokasta Valle.
So what's the goddamn point in campaigning as a flyweight when you clearly can't make the weight?
Bit of strategy to have 1 or 2 pounds over on your opponents, to come in a little fresher than they do, a little stronger, because they will have made the weight while Marlen is customarily over.
Though insisting on campaigning as a quote-unquote flyweight, when Gabby Fundora is the flyweight champion, the undisputed champion, there are no other belts to win. She has them all, and I don't think Marlen beats her.
I don't really understand. Maybe what Marlen and her team are thinking is, we'll bide our time at flyweight and wait for Gabby to move up, because once she does, the belts will be fragmented and we can pick one or some of them up. But if you can't make the weight, then how's that gonna happen?
I don't know.
The fight with Areli Musinho was kind of pointless, and now this one is pointless too. I mean, if you can't make flyweight, you're not gonna win a belt there. So for spending time in this division, so to speak, she could have moved up to super flyweight in her last fight and got in position to fight for a title in this one.
In this fight.
There are 4 champions in the super flyweight division. Some are more beatable than others. You could give Marlen Esparza reasonable odds to beat Irma Garcia, Ashley Gonzalez,
Jasmine Artiga.
that if she would have moved up in weight in her last fight and gotten in position in her last fight, she may well have been fighting for a title in this one.
I got Yokasta winning tomorrow.
Yokasta's a busier fighter than Marlen Esparza, and a more aggressive fighter than Marlen Esparza, so she might be able to do enough to be the busier fighter in the round and in the fight to get a points decision. Marlen's not a puncher.
She's never been a puncher, and even though she came in 1 or 2 pounds over, she's not gonna all of a sudden turn into Artur Betterbeef because of that.
She's a mover, she's a jabber, she's a thinker, she's a boxer. Whereas Yokasta Valle is more of an artillery fighter, a machine gun.
Aggression, combinations, that's her speciality. The tail of the tape is about even between them.
There are no big discrepancies in terms of height and length between them to where Yokasta will be noticeably smaller, at least not in terms of height and length, but perhaps in weight.
Marlen is gonna be heavier.
She is the naturally heavier fighter of the two, but it's not going to add anything to her punch, I don't think. I like Yokasta Valle to win a points decision by being the more prolific fighter of the two, but if she doesn't, and Marlen wins, you can hardly give her credit for it. You're fighting a minimum weight at flyweight, and to top it all off, you missed the weight.
Can't give her any kind of credit if she wins.
I don't think she's going to. If she doesn't, you have to wonder what's next for Marlen Esparza after that. If she loses tomorrow, does Golden Boy Promotions sever ties to this fighter? Do they cut her loose?
They might.
Marlen Esparza, in a very general sense, was never a well-liked fighter. You know, I saw more people that liked Senicia Estrada than Marlen, and I think more people like Yokasta Valle than they like Marlen. Marlen's got the whole amateur standout thing, the Olympian thing going, but
she was never really a fan favorite.
In any event, I'm going with Yokasta Valle to win a points decision. I think she still can in spite of Marlen blowing the weight. She's not all of a sudden going to turn into a big puncher because of that. Yokasta Valle on points due to activity is the pick. In men's super middleweight news, Christian Mbilli versus Diego Pacheco, WBC orders purse bid for interim title fight.
Yeah, just because they order it doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Not even the allure of a secondary title at stake was enough to get Christian Mbilli and Diego Pacheco on the same page. The World Boxing Council has called for an April 8th purse bid to determine promotional rights for Mbilli versus Pacheco interim super middleweight title fight. Boxing Scene is confirmed. The ruling was made after it was determined that enough time had lapsed for the two sides to reach a deal. Mbilli, 28-0 with 23 KOs, is co-promoted by Eye of the Tiger Management and Top Rank. Pacheco, 23-0 with 18 KOs, is a homegrown matchroom boxing contender. The winner of the proposed bout would become the WBC mandatory challenger to lineal and unified super middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez. That's if the fight actually moves forward. A big question, given Mbilli's frustrating track record of landing the fights he craves. An unbeaten 29-year-old contender from Montreal, by way of Cameroon, Mbilli has long sought out the best fights at super middle. The ordered bout represents his second round of talks with Pacheco and Matchroom. The two parties were previously instructed to reach terms for an IBF-ordered title eliminator. It went all the way to a purse bid hearing before Matchroom pulled Pacheco out.
This time it's the World Boxing Council ordering the fight between them.
Pulled him from the mix because, at the time, he had already scheduled the fight against unbeaten Steven Nelson.
Saw that fight. That was a good fight.
Pacheco defeated Nelson via 12-round unanimous decision in their January 25th headliner from the Chelsea Theater at the Cosmopolitan in Vegas. It was teased at the time that his next fight would land around May or June. The back end is still the targeted time frame, while Pacheco, also the WBO's #1 contender, weighs his options. Mbilli was instead steered towards an IBF eliminator against Kevin Lele Sajo. That ordered bout also went to a purse bid, which was won by Y12 Boxing, Sajo's promoter, which planned to stage the bout May 8th in Paris. Camille Estepon, the head of Eye of the Tiger Management and Mbilli's promoter, insisted that his company was outbid unfairly. The basis of the claim was that Eye of the Tiger Management participated under the belief that the fight had to take place within 90 days of the January 30 hearing. Y12 chose the May 8th fight date to coincide with Victory Day, a widely celebrated holiday in France. That line of thinking wasn't enough to convince Eye of the Tiger that it was done in good faith, as a decision was made to pull Mbilli from that fight.
Well, that was stupid. One, because Kevin Lele Sajo is actually more beatable than Diego Pacheco, and two, if you would have stuck with Kevin, you would have at least had a dance partner for May. The way things are going, you might not fight at all.
The development has left Mbilli out of the ring since last August, an unfortunate career turn after his 3-win 2024 campaign. His third and final victory of the year was a 10-round UD win over former title challenger Sergey Derevyanchenko in Quebec City, Canada, last August. Another failed attempt to lure Pacheco into the ring could further extend Mbilli's downtime. The process would reset as his team seeks out a challenge against the next highest-ranked available contender. It was agreed upon by the WBC Board of Governors to allow an interim title into the mix given Alvarez's planned 2025 campaign. First William Skull, then of course, Terence Crawford.
In layman's terms, the WBC don't want to pester Canelo with any mandatories that might impede his upcoming schedule, and thus, they manufactured an interim title for their contenders to fight for.
But like I said, Christian Mbilli's team might have been better off just going through with that IBF eliminator against Kevin Lele Sajo in May.
Why?
If your biggest hang-up was that the fight's all the way out there in May, the way you're doing things, you might not fight anybody in May. That you wanted to get Mbilli out there in a timely fashion.
This is the opposite.
You also gotta consider the virtues of fighting in an IBF eliminator versus a WBC eliminator. You fight for the IBF, you do so with the assurance that they're gonna order the fight when the time comes, whereas with the WBC, you don't know that. They could leave you in limbo for months, for years. They've done it to other fighters. They could do it to you.
You think they'd strip Canelo Alvarez of his belt to give it to you?
The WBC would never do that, but the IBF, they've stripped Canelo more than once.
They stripped him at 160, and they stripped him again more recently at 168. That's how William Skull ended up with that belt.
In a very general sense, the IBF doesn't hesitate to strip fighters, even high-profile ones, that don't comply with their mandates. And that's the virtue of going the IBF route as opposed to going the WBC route. All the WBC is going to do is manufacture an interim title for you to hold, then tell you to be patient.
While charging you sanctioning fees to hold your position. While charging you sanctioning fees to hang on to the interim title they cooked up for you.
It wasn't a good idea going the WBC route over the IBF route, and it's for that reason I think they should have just went through with the Sajo fight in France.
Maybe the fight wasn't going to happen on a schedule that was to your liking, or maybe what you didn't like is that Sajo's team was at the helm of the promotion.
Maybe that's what Camille Estefan really didn't like, and maybe that's why he really pulled Mbilli out of that fight, but I reiterate, the Sajo fight was more winnable than the Pacheco fight. Not that the Pacheco fight is going to happen anyway.
They're at a stalemate over the date and location. Team Mbilli wants it in Quebec. Pacheco's team want it in LA.
Won't the purse bid solve this situation, though?
Not really, because Diego Pacheco's ranked number 1 with the WBO. He can always stay on the WBO route. Screw the WBC.
Let him order their purse bid. He doesn't have to comply. He can go in his own direction. This is why I said Mbilli should have just stayed on the IBF route. Camille Estefan must have been thinking to himself, I don't want to roll the dice sending my guy to France so that he can fight their fighter, but if you fight Diego, that's rolling a dice too.
And that's if you even fight him.
There are already rumors out there that Diego Pacheco could be returning in early summer against Trevor Macambi. When the smoke settles on all of this, Mbilli might be left without a dance partner and empty-handed, unless you consider another WBC trinket title any form of a prize. I don't. I look at that as a way for them to charge you whenever you fight.
A way for them to siphon money from you while they make empty promises and don't order the Canelo fight.
Because fighting Canelo doesn't boil down to what the WBC says. It boils down to Canelo. It really is up to him. And they are going to fall in line with whatever he wants, whatever he says.
So at the risk of sounding like a broken record, you should have stayed the IBF route.
Speaking of the IBF, Frank Warren maps out Daniel Dubois' plan ahead of a potential Alexander Usyk rematch. Queensberry Promotions boss Frank Warren has doubled down on his desire to deliver a rematch between Usyk and Daniel, this time for the undisputed crown. Heavyweight king Usyk emerged from their first encounter back in 2023 with a comprehensive 9th round stoppage win, halting his fatigued opponent with a thudding jab. But still, Dubois remains convinced that despite the referee ruling it a low blow, the punch he landed in the 5th of their clash was a legal body shot. In any case, the 27-year-old has looked vastly improved since losing to the formidable Ukrainian. Wins inside the distance against Filip Prgovic and Jarrell Miller, two sturdy contenders, saw him enter a monumental showdown against Anthony Joshua, who he also stopped.
The problem here is that both Usyk and Daniel have mandatories in the queue.
The IBF are on the verge of ordering a fight between Daniel Dubois and Derek Chisora, and the WBO have already ordered Usyk to face Joseph Parker. And so, should the New Zealander end up facing Usyk next, it is likely that Dubois will instead defend his red and gold strap against Derek Chisora. If there's no unification, Joseph Parker has been ordered to fight him for the WBO title, Warren added, so Usyk has a choice of 4-belt unification, fight Joseph Parker, or vacate the WBO. They will be his choices. Will he retire? I don't know, but that will be his choice. Whatever the outcome, Warren finds himself in a favorable position, with Usyk's next assignment more than likely being against a Queensberry fighter. Dubois, Parker, and Chisora all belong to his flourishing stable of heavyweights, but also Fabio Wardley and Lawrence Okolie, who are the number 1 ranked contenders with the WBA and WBC respectively, could soon leverage their lofty positions.
Whatever way you want to look at it, with Usyk, he's number 1, Warren said. But with every one of his mandatories, he's got to fight one of our guys. So it's brilliant, it's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to it.
A few passing thoughts. Queensberry Promotions, Old Fish Eyes, has really cornered the market on heavyweight action because he has most of the somebodies at the weight right now. So it really is a great situation for him. It's a win-win. Now, Usyk is not going to fight every single one of these guys. Usyk at the most has 1 or 2 fights left in him. So beyond his retirement, Frank's already got the next wave of champions in Fabio Wardley and Lawrence Okolie.
Don't forget Daniel.
That's where things get murky. It's hard to know what's going to happen next, especially considering that the same guy who's training Daniel now used to train Derek Chisora. Would Don Charles actually train Daniel to beat up his guy? I don't know.
What about Derek? Does he really want a title shot, or is he just gonna leverage the situation for some step-aside money? You pay me well, and I'll let you 2 guys have your unification match.
Meanwhile, I can still have my swan song fight, my farewell fight. I'll just find some other guy to do it.
Get paid 2 ways. Get paid for stepping aside, and then get paid again for fighting.
Joseph Parker's situation is pretty murky too, because Joseph wants that Usyk fight. He's been calling him out on his social media. Can they convince him to step aside too, so that Usyk and Daniel can fight?
I don't know.
Just as a boxing fan, I would rather see Usyk fight Parker, because that's a fight I haven't seen Usyk in. You know, I already saw Usyk fight Anthony Joshua 2 times, Tyson Fury 2 times. If he fights Daniel again...
It's another guy he fought 2 times, whereas Joseph Parker, that's new meat. It's fresh meat.
I'm a little bit more intrigued by that fight than the Dubois rematch. Not to say that I don't like the Dubois rematch, because that's still a good fight. They do have unfinished business, and it would be for undisputed. I like either fight, but I'm intrigued by the Parker fight a little more.
Usyk versus Dubois is bigger, though.
You do that in the United Kingdom? That's a big show. That's a big show unto itself, to where you don't even need Riyadh season money to put it together. It sells itself. It is a big fight. The rematch between Daniel and Usyk in the UK.
He's getting on, you know. Usyk, he's getting up there in age.
Given how murky this situation is, there's so much to sort out, so many fingers in this pie. You want to do things in a timely fashion when you're Usyk's age. But between Chisora and Parker and Daniel and the mandates and everything that's going on, it's hard to know what's next.
For the money, the Dubois fight is the fight they should do. For the money.
That's the biggest one you can put on. Is Daniel so vastly improved now that he can avenge the loss, that he can beat Usyk in a rematch?
It's the heavyweight division, which is more spontaneous than any other division because you're always 1 punch away from being knocked out. He'd be facing a Usyk that is older than the one he first fought.
I think for Usyk, that's the fight he needs to have. Rather than just satisfying a mandatory in Joseph Parker, becoming undisputed 2 times would be bigger for Usyk, and monetarily, it would be bigger. I like the Parker fight.
That's my personal preference. That's my perspective. But from Usyk's perspective, the Daniel Dubois fight might be the way to go. That might be better.
More legacy, more money, and you beat this guy before. You're not in unfamiliar territory.
That might be the direction he needs to go in.
Whether or not it would be for undisputed, though, we gotta see.